Okay, here's a finished Picade that I've put together. Picade is a pre-made kit that comes ready to assemble. It's from Firmware. They're based in Sheffield in England, and they've got a Kickstarter campaign, or they had a Kickstarter campaign, I think it was the first in the UK actually, to provide all the parts that someone needs to build their own bartop. And this is driven by a Raspberry Pi, hence the Pi in the name. And it works really well. It's easy to put together, and I have to say I'm hopeless with this sort of DIY. So I was a bit put off initially putting this together, but the instructions that come with it are really clear, and all you need is a screwdriver. There's no soldering, and there's nothing heavy duty involved at all. They quote something like 2 to 3 hours to put it all together. It probably took me, I don't know, best part of 4, because like I say, I'm not really great at this sort of thing. So I do appreciate the help I had as well from Nigel and Dan, thanks very much. But altogether, yeah, if you set aside 3 hours solid, I think pretty much anyone could put it together. Like I say, all you need is a screwdriver and a bit of patience, really. They all come, you can see here as I zoom in, you've got different components. You've got the side piece there, so that's one large piece. You've got the acrylic front. It comes with all the artwork there, but obviously you could put your own in as well, so it doesn't have to be that design. And at the top there, you can replace this marquee to say whatever you want there. The components themselves, like you've got the joysticks and the buttons, absolutely everything comes with this kit. It's £180, so you don't need to add anything, except you do need your own Raspberry Pi. It can run on other systems as well, so it doesn't need a Pi, but it's kind of designed for it, and that's what can quite often make it easier to put together, because you can run RetroPie. And RetroPie runs pretty much out the box, which I'll show you in a moment. Apologies for the poor audio, because I imagine it's not great on my iPhone, but just to give you an idea of the unit. Like I say, you've got the main pieces. A lot of them are large, sort of single MDF, I think it's powder coated. It's got a nice finish, it's good quality. And most of the time is about the wiring and sort of just making sure these screws go in nice and tightly, and everything's pretty good quality. Now you might have noticed I've got a load of stickers on the buttons. That's really just to help you understand how this works and gets together on the Pi and talks to the Raspberry Pi. Because when you press a button or use a joystick, the Pi doesn't see a joypad and joypad buttons, it sees a keyboard. So basically you're emulating a keyboard, and the keyboard the keyboard signals that it sends, I've marked up here. So the joypad, it would send on the arrow keys. On a joypad it would send the up, down, left, right, just the arrow keys. So that's the signal that the joystick would send. And you've got 6 buttons. Now, depending on how you wire these up, the buttons will send different keyboard signals. So if you follow instructions, this is the mapping. Now, you can't wire it differently, so instead of sending a Z, it sends a Y. It will only send what it's programmed to do. Although, if you want to take the board out and reprogram it, you can actually change the keys it sends as well, but that's probably a separate video. You don't need to change the keys, there's no real need. The default mappings are great. Anyway, if you map it correctly, as per the instructions, these are the keyboard signals each button sends. So, and it counts it in terms of the buttons. It calls that 1, 2 and 3, then you got 4, 5 and 6. And you can see that when you press that, you get left control, left alt, space button, left shift, Z and X. And then at the front, you've got another 2 buttons. You've got, now this bit, I should say, I may have wired this differently to how it got instructed. So on yours, this C button, which is effectively select, or the C probably stands for coin, then I've got S over here. Now the instructions might wire it so actually the one on the left is S, but either way, you've got an S and C depending on how you wire it. C for select, or you can map it to whatever you want. You could map that to be the A button on the joypad if you want, but it's not very practical. So really, you should be mapping the signal that sends a C to the select. But I'll show you the RetroPie configuration in a minute anyway. Yeah, so we've got select, which sends a C, and S for start. And just quickly on the top, we've got the X button, and that's useful because when you start a ROM in RetroPie, you've got the option, just before it starts, it says press M or X. So you can tap that and you can change the configuration or change the emulators using just this setup. You wouldn't need to put a keyboard in, but you can if you want, obviously. Then on the side, or this side, you've got two more buttons that sends an escape keyboard signal and enter or return. So again, you can navigate menus using that. And yeah, you've got escape there. And I tend to use escape for quitting out of the game. So what I've done, my personal preference on this, is not to use hotkeys, which is slightly different because you might want to say, well, I want to load and save and change shaders and reset the game with my Picade, but because I'm just using arcade emulator on this, I don't really need them, so I'll turn hotkeys off on mine, but again I'll cover that in the RetroPie setup. So that's the exterior really. You've got the acrylic front covering the LCD screen. You can just sort of see the difference there. That's an 8-inch screen. That's the default that comes with it for the £180 cost, but you can also get separately a 10 and 12-inch one, I think, so you can increase that. The resolution of this one is 800 by 600. Okay. Then you've got around the back, you've got a little catch on the door, which is there. And in here, I don't know how well that's going to show really, it's pretty dark. On the back there, that's the driver board for the monitor. You've got one cable coming out of it here, which goes straight into the Pi, which is on the back. Now the Raspberry Pi there is quite loose at the minute, and I've kept it loose because I keep getting the SD card in and out, so I'll tighten that up after. But again, I don't know how well you can see, but you've got in the Pi, you've got the HDMI cable, which goes back into the board to get the signal. Then you've got the audio cable here, which goes into the Picade down in the corner. I mean, you can't see that, it's too dark. I need to get another light ready. But down there in the depths, you've got the Picade board, which is what does the translation of the button presses into keyboard signals so that Pi can understand it. You've got two USBs going into the Pi. One is for the power of effectively powers the driver board there. So that's used for that. And the other USB cable is coming into from the Picade PCB, which is down in the depths here, powering that, which leaves you two free. So you could put, if you wanted, you could put a keyboard in there to give yourself a bit of ease configuring it, or you could even put another joystick or joypad, so you could have two player, and that'd be fine as well. But for my purposes, I just want it one player arcade, because playing I don't know, console games on a joystick just seems a bit weird, the same way playing arcade games on a joypad didn't feel quite right. So my configuration, I've just gone with arcade games. But yeah, you could put a couple of controllers in there if you wanted for multiplayer. So there's a couple of options. You just want to make sure that you don't overpower it, because it's got 2 amp, the official supply, or the recommended supply has got 2 amp going to it. So as long as you don't draw more than that, you should be okay. Yeah, that's about it. What I'll do, I'll show you some gameplay on it as well. In terms of the build, I think it's really high quality. You've got a little handle at the back there. I think it stands up really well, and it's good that you can customise the artwork. Oh, just quickly on the side there, you've got 2 more buttons, plus and minus. Now they don't, as far as I know, they don't really talk to the Raspberry Pi. They just deal with the volume, so quickly increase and decrease. There's also been a firmware upgrade for the Picade board, which came out in about August 2015, which has a couple of tweaks. But now I think when they ship the Picade PCB, which is about the same size as the Raspberry Pi, it's just in there, and you can see it on the Pi Moroni website. I think they're shipping it with the upgraded firmware anyway, because mine seems to behave as per the update. So that's pretty much it. What I'll do, I'll fire up some games so you can see how they behave. Just think of anything else. I think that's pretty much it. A few people at the moment are waiting for the 12-inch screens to come in because they want to get the extra real estate there. This 8-inch screen is 800 by 600, although I think I'm running mine at 640 480 at the minute, but I'll test that out in a minute. Excuse me. Okay, so now I'll fire it up. Okay, just quickly, I've got a bit of a better light angle on it now. Anyway, that's the Pi, the door on the side there. You've got the 4 USBs, 2 of them populated. There you've got the audio jack going in and the HDMI cable. And then inside, there's your driver board again with the HDMI going in and the power on the right there. And down in the back there, if I tip that, you can just see the red PCB of the Picade that's got all the wiring for all the buttons going into the back there. So the massive wires really is just the leads coming from the buttons and the joystick, which is a lot easier to put together than it might look. And that's pretty much it for the internals. You've got the speakers on the side there to give you the volume. And that's it. Okay, so the Picade should be booting up now. There you go, you see the 4 raspberries at the top. RetroPie splash screen. Then it should just kick into the emulation station splash screen. And the only power you need to power the Picade PCB, the Raspberry Pi and the screen driver board for the LCD is a standard Raspberry Pi power, which, just go back here, you can see I've just plugged in normal power for the Pi, that's all you need. Okay, so that's booted into the standard emulation station interface. Now, it hasn't asked me for the controller details because I've already programmed that. But what I'll do, I'll show you another section in a second. I'll restart it again without the details in there, and you'll see how that's put in, which is in the normal way. You'll get prompted for the buttons and joystick, and you'll just move it as you do, and it will reprogram the relevant configuration files for you. But yeah, this one's already in, so if we have a look at a bit of gameplay. Now, I did say earlier, all I've got on this is FBA. This emulator I'm using is LRFBA. It's not LRFBA Next or PiFBA. And I've also gone for all the RetroArch based, hence LR emulators, because then I've only got to worry about one configuration file and it's just more convenient. But obviously you could choose whatever emulators you want. You could put all your consoles on here, so you could be playing your Nintendo with a joystick. You could be playing Mega Drive, SNES, Master System, the lot. There's no limitation just because you've got a keyboard. So yeah, I've gone for arcade. So I've gone for, this one is LRFBA. This one is, I'm thinking because we've got two names. This one is LR Main 2003. So it's a fairly new one that's been introduced to the RetroPie build. Excuse me. Then we've got, this one's LR iMain for all, so an older set, so that's runs on 0.375B ROM set. And I've made them effectively have different games, so that set has got different games to that one. I should really trim it down because, to be honest, this probably wouldn't be a daily usage, it's more for sort of a fun entertainment device, you know, to have a bit of a blast now and again, and I don't need hundreds and hundreds of games. So I manually reduced this LRFBA down to 204. And Neo Geo, they've only got about 140-ish, yeah, games anyway, so that's sort of automatically reduced. But let's check one out. So this Neo Geo, I'm using FBA to run it as well. It's just like a subset. So if you want to know about the main ROM sets and main configuration, that would be a whole different topic. And first thing you want to do is check out the RetroPie Wiki. Read the Wiki, it's got a great page on how to manage your ROMs. 90% of main questions get resolved there. It's a great start. Because setting up main emulation or other arcade emulation can be a lot more involved than running, say, Genesis Mega Drive ROMs. With those, you just put them on. Main stuff is a lot more involved. Anyway, yeah, so Neo Geo. Now on my buttons, I've mapped this. So I've got this is in terms of like the RetroPad, if you like, or the emulation station interpretation of it. I've got A, B, X, Y, left shoulder, right shoulder. Then I've got select, oops, come on, start, and then here, actually here I don't think I specified those because I don't really need to. Okay, so because I want to select that menu, I press A, which in my case is this, which is sending a Z signal, and there, I'm in. And I'm going to press page down here, so if we go, which one near G, so FBA. Oh, and FBA does a great job actually, the libretro FBA does a great job of core mapping. It's quite intelligent and it knows that if you're, say, playing a fighter, this should be, oh, by the way, I just nudged something, I'm just saying they're really sensitive, you don't have to tap them very hard and they do get the press. Anyway, this is like light punch, medium punch, hard punch, light kick, medium kick, hard kick, so it's quite aware of those, whereas some of the other emulators, the mapping can be a bit questionable, so you might need to rejig, but FBA does a good job. Anyway, so I was in Neo Geo, and I'll go for King of Fighters, move this up, it scrolls up. Can't see that well, but there we go. Say 98, I've scraped these as well, so I set the scraper up. Again, that's part of RetroPie and it's also on the Wiki, so if you want to see how you get the graphics, just check the Wiki out, or one of my videos, or both. Okay, I'm going to select that, start with Z. That's where I had the opportunity to tap X. It would have started. So this is emulating the arcade version rather than the home version of the Neo Geo. And you've got the volume. I'll tap those. Now I don't know how well it's coming out, but I have put a little basic shader on these, so it's not quite as plain as it might be without it. So it should give that slight CRT effect, but I'm not sure, like I say, if it's going to show up that well here. Oh, it's okay on the phone at the moment, but I don't know what that's looking like. It just makes it look a bit more, I don't know, typical of what you would have played, rather than a quite harsh, bright colours that aren't broken up. I'll have a stab at playing it, which is going to be tricky one-handed, but let's see. So C adds credits, because I've mapped that to select. And press start, one player. This being Neo Geo only has 4 buttons anyway. I mean, I know that's not going to come out that well, but you just have to imagine. Okay. And you get the idea. Okay, so I've also mapped my hotkey. Well, when I say I haven't used any hotkeys, I haven't used any combination hotkeys, so I've disabled the enable hotkey button. So I just tap the button and it'll do it. So I've unmapped all of these buttons from doing anything other than play the game. But I've left these two, so I could get mapped those 22 functions and escape. I've mapped, oops, sorry. I've mapped escape to quit the game. So if I tap escape, there, just quits out of it, which is a bit less hassle for people that probably be playing this. especially if you just let your mates round and have a quick go. They don't want to be trying to find a combination to do stuff, so it's easier that way. Excuse me. Right, now to go back in here, you press B as normal, so, and B is mapped to this one, which I click too heavily. There we go. Let's have a look at main. That's iMain for all, so we go in there. Jump down. What's a good example? Some of the arcade games, their resolution only uses a portion of the screen because it's only 8 inches anyway. It can be quite a small playing area, but yeah, there are some limitations. So maybe Final Fight. That one up. Again, you've got an option. Oh, I was a bit late. But if you press X, you can get into the menu as normal. Because this is emulating main, you've got to say OK, which is just move left and right on the joypad. You can hear a slight hissing as well, but as soon as the actual audio kicks in, it doesn't really matter. Okay, credits. And so on. Anyway, I quit out of that. Tap escape. That was the LR iMain for all emulator playing Final Fight. Yeah, you can get as many ROMs as you want on there. Like I say, you don't have to just put arcade emulators on here. You can put whatever you want, and even add the other joysticks. What I'll do now, we'll go to the command line, and I'll show you the configuration needed to get this up and running, which is pretty minimal, depending on how you want it set up. Okay, nearly forgot. I said I was going to boot up without having a pre-configured card. So this is a brand new RetroPie 3.1.2 image written to the card. Nothing else on it at all. So this is the first time it's booted up. I should do things like resize the file card system, etc. Sort of standard stuff. But I just want to see. I can hear the hiss there actually again from the volume, so I'll just turn the volume down a little bit there. Okay, so we saw the RetroPie splash screen. Ah, I've forgotten something. This is quite a good example actually, so I'll keep it in. It hasn't booted or visibly booted onto this screen because there's one file that you must change before you can boot, otherwise the HDMI process doesn't work correctly. And all it is to uncomment one line in the file that's in the boot directory, so the root directory and then boot directory, and the file name is config.txt. And I'll show you that on the screen in a minute how to do that, but I'm going to have to just manually do that. And the good thing about this is you can do it straight from Windows, so you don't have to SSH in or do anything clever. Just put the card that you've just imaged back into Windows, double click on it, and it's one of the few areas on the card that Windows will actually see. And you'll see, as soon as you open it there, config.txt, uncomment the, I think it's HDMI force plug. Anyway, you'll see in a minute when I go in there. But yeah, that's why it's not worked. So I'm going to go do that now. Okay, so this HDMI force hot plug is the option you want to uncomment. So you remove the hash and it's done. There we go, got the RetroPie logo. And it should happily kick on. Otherwise you just see like a blue screen saying it's got power but there's no input. And that's it. So again, it's a completely clean 3.1.2 image of, no sorry, 3.2.1 image of RetroPie. And it comes up as normal saying welcome, no game, I can't get that to focus, so yeah. No gamepads detected, hold a button on your device. So the only thing I've got plugged in at the minute is my buttons, which are effectively a keyboard. So if I briefly hold a button down, you'll see at the bottom, there, see it says keyboard up here. So that's what it sees. And if I hold it down longer, it'll bring me up to the configuration section, which I'll do now. There we go, so D-pad up. I'll just move that up, and then you can see there that it says it's all key up. That's just the same as pressing the arrow keys on the keyboard. Start, I know that I've put on my setup, this one, that's S, so if I tap that, there we go, it says key S. Select is that one, key C. A, so I map it like A, B, X, Y. Z, left shift, like I say there, Z, left shift. Sorry about all the refocusing. Right, we're at X and Y. And I've got left bottom and right bottom, which was space and X, which is space and X. Okay, what's next? Left top, right. I don't have any of these buttons. I do have these two spare, but I don't want to use them for these sort of controls. So I'm just going to skip it, and to do that you just hold down one that you've already done. So if I just hold down on the left shift again, you'll see it skipped through. It says not defined, because this is what it's going to pass through to RetroArch, but I don't have the buttons, so it doesn't really matter. There's more than enough for arcade games, so it's all fine. There. Then it goes to the OK button, and to do that then you then press A, which I've mapped to this button here, which is a Z, but that's what Emulation Station sees as A, so I'll tap that and it should let me in. There we go, so it's gone with the default theme of carbon. I changed mine on that earlier one back to simple, but yeah, this is carbon, and it's got the default emulators there. Joystick's quite happily scrolling through. And I could choose options. So what you probably want to do actually is choose the RetroPie option, hit your A button to get in that menu. Oh. And you could hear, what we've got? That one. Raspberry Pi configuration tools, Raspberry config. If you go in there, you could then expand your disk system, and then you'll be away really. So I'll do that. See how that goes. If I choose that with Z, it should bring me up to that menu, and I can expand the file system, or I can also set the overclock on it as well. So I've got a Pi 2, so I just set it to Pi 2 overclock. I could do that, but I do the expand file system and stop there. So hit Z. Okay, no, it's not Z, is it? Hang on. Oh, it's probably enter. So this one at the back, so I'll just tap that. Yeah, there we go. Right, and that says has been resized. It'll do it on the next reboot. Okay, we'll enter again, and then I can do that here and say finish. Would you like to reboot now? Yes. Done. So then you can start copying your ROMs across or anything out. And then you can always, you know, if it's possible on the Pi, you can just put the Cat5 cable in there, so you can copy it there, or put a USB stick in to copy, however you normally do it really. But that's essentially it. And now I'll go into the command line so you can see how to go about configuring it for the RetroArch emulators, getting the keys to work correctly. Okay, hopefully the audio is a bit clearer now. We're at the command prompt, and I can show you the change we made to that video driver. So here again, you can do this straight from Windows, so you don't have to do it here, but you can if you want to. If you change directory to boot, and you can see files in here, and the one we want to change is this config one. So we do that with sudo nano config, and if you just scroll down, you can see this one here is not got a hash in front of it. So that's what you need to take out. When you see it for the first time, it would just have a hash like that. So make sure the hash is gone, and then to save just hit Control X and it'll prompt you to say, are you sure you want to save? But that's all you need to change in here. This is the file where it sets things like the CPU management, so the overclocking and the memory split, but the rest really are fine as default. You can see the explanation for that on, actually it's got it here. For more options, see this file here. You can just go there and find out what all these settings do. But the only one you need to worry about for the Picade is that one. Make sure it's uncommented without the hash at the front. Okay, so cancel that. Save modified, no, it's fine. But yeah, you'd say yes to that. And we go back to the home directory. If I list that, you can see I've installed the scraper. That's just left over from my manual installation. So you'd only need that if you want to scrape the extra details, but you're better off running that from the setup menu, which I'll show you the setup menu for the scraper whilst we're here, because it's all built into the Pi now. So if we go to this directory, I want to run RetroPie _setup.sh. Then in here, if you go to the experimental packages, I think it's in, and go down to scraper, hit enter there, follow the instructions. It's really easy and you'll be scraping away. Okay, so I'm going to cancel out of that. Now the changes I made are pretty minimal, but they suit what I'm after. As you saw, I've got just the arcade emulators working, because that's all I want to set up. And on my SD card at the minute, it's a 32 gig card, and I've only used 8.5, so I've got plenty of spare room if I did want to use any extras, just to give you an idea of the space used. And if I go to the RetroArch configuration files now, I'll just go back to the home directory actually, and what we did a moment ago by configuring the joystick on the emulation station, it created a file. And if we go into that file, which is, if you change into .emulation station, once you're in the home directory, change to that directory, press enter, and you can see here that it's created an input configuration file, and we can have a quick read of that by typing nano _es input.cfg. You can see it's detected a keyboard, and the only keys that emulation station care about are these, which is page down, page up, start, and show you up, down, left, right, select, and the A and B. And you can see here it's got the values, key ID 122, so that maps to. Well, I don't quite know why A is 122 and B is about 107 million, but anyway, that works fine. Yeah, and select 19. Anyway, that's what emulation station creates. You don't need to know about, that's just what it's done. And then, as part of that, to send the right instructions to RetroArch, which is what you're going to be playing the games through, unless you use a different emulator, it creates this file here, which it sort of passes the details through to RetroArch. Again, it's not required, it's just more for your information. You can see here, you can see what it's doing by, it's got the extra buttons we chose, like left bottom and right bottom, so it's got those codes sent through as well. And you can see what it does with these codes if you go to apt directory, RetroPie, and configs, and all, because you don't, I mean, you could configure this on a per system basis, but given it's a keyboard, it's most appropriate for once to actually edit this main file. So in this directory, you've got rettroarch.cfg, which is always red. And we'll also see in the joypads directory, there's probably nothing at all, because we haven't configured any joypad whatsoever. Yeah, it's completely empty because there's no joypad attached unless you put one in and chose to configure it. But I'm not going to do that. Right, okay, so we're going to have a look at this file here, and we can tell it's been recently, or you'll be able to tell that it's been recently edited. If you type ls space -lh, oh no, back a directory, do that again. You can see that RetroArch, it got edited much more recently than the default timestamp of October 28th, which is when the latest RetroPie release came out. So you can see that something's written to it. And if we edit that now, nano.retroarch.cfg, and I'm going to scroll down with Control V to the section I want to see, which is here. You've got the keyboard input details here. and it's got input player 1 for A button, and the RetroArch RetroPad is Z, which is what that key press or the button press sent the Raspberry Pi, so it sees it as a Z. So you can see all of your buttons mapped down here. Excuse me. And if you wanted to swap them around, for let's say you did your start and select, map them differently, and you actually wanted it left to right instead of right left on that start and select, you could just put C there and S there, and it would swap it around. So you can manage it a little bit there as well. So that's where it's put the keys for you. So it's done it all. So based on that, you should be straight into your games, and it will work. But one thing I did change on this, I'll just scroll down. Right at the bottom is this one here, input enable hotkey. And I think before, I'll check on an original one, I think it said, I'm trying to remember, I think it said it might have been the C key for holding select, but like I say, I don't want any hotkey, so I don't want to enable a hotkey, so I don't want to, in this instance, hold down select, press A to save the game, or hold down select and press X to get the RGB menu. I just want it pretty straightforward. So I've turned the enable hotkey off, which means now that all the hotkeys would actually work on a single press. So if I pressed the X key, it would just bring up the menu straight away, which again would be pointless. So I've disabled that as well. And I can show you if I search for the reset one, because I think that's easier to find. Where's the curtain? There we go. So here, reset the content, shift. Now shift is mapped to button 4, which is the sort of first button on the lower row. So when I press that, it would automatically reset my game, which wouldn't be any good. So I've commented that line out. I've made sure I've commented it out. But some of them, like fast forward for example, even if you comment them out, they've got a hard-coded default. So if I show you where the forward one is, 1 second, there we go. Now the default for fast forward is space, so every time I press the third button, the top right button of that 6, it would fast forward the game. And I tried commenting it out, but it still fast forwarded the game. So instead, I didn't uncomment it out and just said null, so nothing will trigger that. So basically, I've just gone through and either commented out hotkeys that got triggered, or I have commented them but put null, so to cancel them out. And what I'll do in the description of the video, I'll put a link to show you a link to my rettroarch.cfg file actually, if you just want to replicate that. But also I'll show you the comparisons, the difference between the generic one and what I've tweaked. And it's hardly anything, it's like about 5 lines or something. Plus obviously the keyboard section that you configure in Emulation Station. But besides that, that's all you need to do to get up and running really. Yeah, that's the hotkeys. And I did make one small extra tweak about the overlays. And you can see that if I change directory back, you've got all the systems here. And if we choose FBA for example, and in FBA I'm using the RetroArch version, so it's not going to read that. I'm not using PyFBA, I'm using RetroArch, so I'll edit that file, and I've made a small change here. I've put these 4 lines in, and that's it. And essentially I've just said enable overlays, and I want this overlay, which is a basic 640 by 480 scanline overlay. Because all the arcade games are such different resolutions, you can't always get a consistent one. If you could put maybe a border around some of the space on some of them, but I've just kept it simple, said 640 480 on them all, and it just runs this configuration file. I can put links to these files and the configuration file, but it's extremely simple. I'll show you now actually where I've put that. I just created this directory here, RetroPie emulators RetroArch shader. That already exists. I created a Picade directory, and in the Picade directory, okay, my keyboard's playing up, bear with me. Okay, keyboard decided to play up there. And we were just looking at the shader that I applied, which is in RetroPie, emulators, RetroArch, shaders, and I created a directory called Picade. In there, I've got 800, 600 one for when I work out how to get 800, 600 working properly. And 640, 480. So this configuration file is what's referenced in that RetroArch file, and in turn it just refers to that PNG. So if I was to edit that overlay file, inside it's just got those 4 lines. So that's how you apply a very basic overlay. Okay, so that was the overlays. Now, just briefly, I'll talk about the screen resolution. Now, the screen's 800 by 600, but I think I'm only running it in 640 by 480, and you can check that largely by using this. Just go back to the home directory. There's a TV service command, and if you put hyphen, trying to remember it now, -m DMT. DMT effectively says show me monitor modes as opposed to TV modes, because you've got it hooked up to an LCD, so it's a monitor. And it says there it supports 640 by 480, but if you look in the detail, if you sort of dig down and get a more detailed output, it will also say it supports 800, 600. And if I look currently, what's it currently doing? It's currently doing 640, 480. So when I forced it to be 800, 600 in the config.txt, it does boot, it does put it in 800, 600, but then I find the games quite often flicker or turn the screen off for a second or so. So I'm still checking that out, but it works fine. It works fine like this. And that's it. So hopefully that video has helped you get to grips with the retro or the Picade with using RetroPie. And it's pretty easy to get up and running. Like I say, I've only done it for the arcade emulators. It's no problem getting it to run for all the other emulators. You just put your ROMs on there as usual. Most of them use RetroArch, so that configuration I showed earlier would work for those as well. But any questions, put them in the comments or go on the forums and ask away. And hopefully help you out. Thanks very much.